In Proverbs chapter 27, verse 6, we read, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful." Joab risked everything by telling David the truth. Welcome to the Word for 2022. Today we're in 2 Samuel chapter 19. David's son Absalom had gathered an army together to go out and kill his father. In response, David too gathered an army together, and they went out to meet Absalom on the battlefield. And when Absalom was killed, word came back to David, and David, he wept bitterly at his son's death. In verse 2, this is what we read. For the whole army, the victory that day was turned to mourning. Instead of coming back as victors, they came back ashamed. Instead of returning back as conquerors, they came back to the city again as though they were ashamed because the king did not celebrate their victory. In response, Joab, who was David's commander-in-chief, came to David. In verse 5, Joab went to David and said, "Today you have humiliated all of your men. They risked their very lives for you. They saved you. But by your actions, you are saying that you love those that hate you and you hate those that love you." This is what you need to do, David. Get out there right now and encourage your men. Otherwise, not a man will be left on your side by nightfall. Joab was absolutely right. His words were hard, but they were truthful. He could not remain silent because he cared too much for David and he cared too much about his men not to speak up. When we see someone that we care about starting to go down the wrong path, they are committing a sin, we have a choice to make. A true friend, according to Scripture, will not condone disobedience or look the other way. Scripture tells us that kisses are far more pleasant than wounds, but they can be devastating if they lull someone into becoming comfortable in their sin. In other words, we can appease our friend by not saying anything, by not telling them the truth, by not sharing a word from God with them. What we're actually doing is we are setting them up for great harm. One other way to put it is this. If we see danger coming and we do not warn them, Scripture says that we will actually be held accountable. In Ezekiel chapter 33, God instructs us in this way. If a watchman sees danger coming and does not sound the alarm, he will be held accountable. But if the warning is given and then not heeded, then the watchman is safe from accountability. When we read scriptures like this, we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we the kind of friend that has the integrity that is needed to be willing to risk everything for their friend in order to turn them from their sin? A true friend would, according to Scripture, even if there is a cost. Now, in full disclosure, I need to let you know that just because you tell the truth doesn't mean that it will always be received well. Joab told the truth, but it was not received well. Joab actually paid a price. He lost his job. David had Joab as his commander-in-chief over the army, but after this episode, he then made Amasa, who was Absalom's commander-in-chief, the commander over his armies. Now, this was a political move for David. We read that when he did this, he won over the hearts of all the men of Judah as though they were one man. Joab told David the truth. If David had not done what Joab had told him to do, he would have lost everything. But instead, it cost Joab his job. Doing the right thing, it's important. Not because people always respond the right way, but because God sees what is done. Others may not respond correctly, but I want to encourage you by letting you know that God sees everything that takes place. God knows what is going on, and God will reward right motives. So continue to do what is right, even if there's a cost. Thank you for joining the Word for 2022.